You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
We look at nowadays when, we can email and get things so quickly, but I wonder how much John Adams may have had a second term if he'd gotten the treaty with France, although he did get it, but we just didn't know.
It's a really good day here in my history studios because I received my new blue jeans from Quince. Nice dark blue indigo color, stretch fit, stretches to the right places. It's very comfortable. I can wear them while I'm podcasting. Or let's say I have a business meeting. It's not a problem to wear these jeans with a nice dress shirt. It works. High quality. That's what I like about Quince. I've actually purchased from Quince before, so it's pretty easy. I was very excited when they became a sponsor because it's pretty easy for me to speak about them. I have a black turtleneck long sleeve that I got from them because they advertised on a different podcast. But that's just the thing. When you hear a product that's sponsored on the internet, whether it's Instagram or podcasts or things, you're probably like, how can it, be? Is it too good to be true? And that's the thing. Quince has really got high quality. They make deals with ethical factories, too. The products are not expensive. You get shirts for $34 in some cases. Got to check it out. Refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/myhist for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. That's QUINCE.com/MYHIST for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/myhist. I'm joined by a listener, Billy Paige. Billy, glad to have you on.
Oh, thank you. It's actually quite an honor.
I'm honored to have you as a listener, really. It's both ways. And how long, you think?
I would say probably close to the beginning.
Oh, really?
I remember way back in 2006 when I got my Microsoft ZUNE, that
ZUNE
wonderful MP3 player. I started just searching for podcasts to listen to. I was searching under the history option, and yours came up.
So that was the beginning, because that is the first year. It was June, 20 years, yeah. Episode about something about George W. Bush that I didn't like. I did have ZUNE listeners. They were very happy with their ZUNE. It's kind of like that BlackBerry thing where people loved it, but then the technology just kind of went.
I had a BlackBerry as well, so yes.
There you go. Tell the listeners a little about yourself. I know you're a Jersey guy like me. You seem to interact with some famous people from time to time.
Yes, I help out at a bookstore in Ridgewood. Bookends often has celebrity signings there. So sometimes history writers, sometimes politicians. As far as politicians, I've worked with Hillary Clinton, Newt Gingrich, among others.
There's two.
Yeah.
Although I bet you they'd get along. Those two would get along.
I didn't get much interaction with Hillary because she had Secret Service with her, and they kept a close eye on her. At this point, she was just a civilian, had no official title at the time, but still, she gets the protection. Newt Gingrich has been there so many times, even sometimes with his wife. She does a lot of children's books. I've even asked him, if I need to get your attention for something, how should I refer to you? Mr. Speaker, Mr. Gingrich? He's like, Newt's fine. I'm like, all right. So my first name basis with Newt Gingrich.
I can say that, and your contact was probably better than mine with both of them, but I can say those are two people that I have seen in the flesh. With Newt Gingrich, it was similar in this way. I was at the OK Corral Diner in Marietta, Georgia, and some guys just like, hey, Newt. And there was Newt. And I'm not saying this to make fun of him, but my impression is he is just an extremely large person. Like the TV, I think it's that turning of the lens in his favor, even, although, that because he was just enormous. At least this was in 1995. This was at the height of him being speaker. He was right next to me, but there were too many other people. And then there was Hillary Clinton a couple of times. At one time, no joke, just walking down the street in New York City in 2002. And I was outside the office, and there was a bunch of them campaigning for a gubernatorial campaign. And there was Hillary. And it's similar to what she said. They did say, like, meet the senator, but too much security.
Buzz Aldrin's been there a few times.
Great.
Obviously he's a national hero, one of the few people who's been on the moon. But yeah, he's interesting. A little bit of a curmudgeon, but he's all right.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be an experience.
And very few people have been able to say that they've done that. Very few. Yeah.
Well, we talked about it on that episode, and I guess I'm always looking for an opportunity to give a little tidbit of history on these calls too. Is like, if people hadn't listened to the follow-up episode for my episode called Inflation in Space. And I did this episode, Inflation in Space. You maybe remember it, but it's basically just about that we could have done so much more with the space program. We should be so much farther. I mean, you saw Artemis, and I'm not knocking Artemis because it really was a great thing. But when you look at that, we should have been doing that so much sooner. We really delayed things, and the culprit is inflation, prices, metal prices, oil, fuel, all of this stuff just made it impossible budgets for Nixon and Carter, who got handed the Kennedy dream, but didn't want to follow through with the next step, which would have been the plans were for a shuttle that would make frequent trips and moon bases. And now we're 2026 and we're only talking about moon bases. It really was the culprit of inflation.
And you mentioned Jimmy Carter. We had him we hosted him at an outside event, and I was stuck at the store with another signing that night. And that guy took a very long time. And by the time I was ready to leave, to walk down the block to where Jimmy Carter was, the motorcade drove past me. So I did not get to meet him. And I would have loved to. He was the first president elected in my life.
Okay.
And I actually remember the episodes you did about him where you were doing your impression of him.
A work in progress. So I did 77, 79, and 81. And I did that series. I had just recently been laid off, so I had some more time. Working now. 77, I didn't love my impression. By the time I did the 81 episode, I had the thing nailed down. And it took several takes. I had a separate track for the Jimmy Carter statements whenever you heard his voice. It wasn't just me doing it right in the moment. With Reagan, I can pretty much do that right off the bat. With Carter, it required a separate practicing and also a little echo, a little reverb, a little filtering, and maybe a pitch because he has a little bit of a higher pitch. Eventually, I got it. Because part of these politicians, how we understand them is their voices.
Especially in recent years where they're such distinct voices like Reagan and even Saturday Night Live has done a lot with the impressions of people. Like everyone has an impression of George H.W. Bush that is basically just Dana Carvey's impression of him. Yeah.
Well, whenever I do George H.W. Bush, it is me doing Dana Carvey.
Yeah,
it's always 100%. Like, not going to do it, not going to.
Yes.
It is pretty close. Yeah, if you look at not so much with Bush, but with Reagan, part of his appeal was the voice. He was a radio guy. And when he made a speech, I mean, that warm voice, those tones reassured a lot of Midwesterners who needed to be reassured. And those were the Reagan Democrats of the time. And, we live in New Jersey towns that were really picked up on that wave of Reagan Democrats in the 1980s, where you had towns that might be blue collar, but could have voted for Nixon or not. And then probably with the McGovern election, these New Jersey blue collar towns like our towns and also Bayonne was a big one, completely flipped to Republicans 1980, 1984. Go back.
I mean, it was a wipeout in 84.
Wipeout.
Yeah.
Wipeout. And then go back for Clinton. So like Bergenfield, where I'm originally from, is only became a Democratic town again with Clinton the first time. Probably some Perot votes helping too. But yeah, so yeah, those are. Yeah, I enjoyed the Carter series. The question I got about it is, are you going to fill in the parts and do 78 and 80? And I feel like what happens was sometimes is I feel like I did enough other episodes that, so the big thing of 78 would be airline deregulation. I did an episode on it. A couple other things I could talk about, and then it's also the Sudat and Begin, but I talked about that in other episodes. So what's left of 78? And then for 1980, that's the election. I've talked about that a lot. So, but anyway, I invited you on, and so go ahead and do any number of things. I'm telling people that you are the first one that I'm speaking to as part of this 20-year series. So you will be the defining moment. If you want to ask any question of me, anything's good.
Well, I'll just say that my fascination with American history probably started sometime in fifth grade when they showed the 1776 musical to us. And as weird as that sounds, see, my birthday, I was born July 3, 1976.
Oh, wow.
So just missed the bicentennial by a few hours. But I always remember that scene towards the end of the movie where they flipped the calendar page to July 3. It was like, wow, that's exactly 200 years before I was born. Like it hit me. It was a big deal. So I saw the movie again a few years later, and like I watch it every year on July 4th now. The extended version, which is even cheesier than the original, but
yes,
it's cheesy. But I think that while the depictions are not completely accurate, so I've learned of some people,
they're not.
I think the characterizations are so good. John Adams is probably somewhat realistic, although I doubt he actually broke into song at random times.
No. Yeah, his character is a little more that he's annoying to people. He knows he's annoying to people. The certain other things, like there's I think James Wilson, they kind of misinterpret a bit, maybe as a person.
He's just like a bumbling guy standing in the background.
Bumbling guy. This man was brilliant, and he was completely committed to. Well, and also he was forced to be committed by his constituents. He was a good politician. He didn't represent Philadelphia where the elites were. He represented a little bit out, and he knew what he had to do. So he was there for independence. He wasn't the bumbling. Yeah. They represent a few things well, but generally, no, it's not. It's not the same dynamics going on that they talk about. But hey, I mean, I think any entry point for kids to then learn history, that's great.
Yeah, and I said I watched that. I've watched the John Adams miniseries. I watched
That's good.
Lots of like documentaries about John Adams in general. He is my favorite historic figure. I've read some books about him, and I also find, like, my opinion is the best way to do a basic studying of American history is just study the presidents, because it's you don't have, it doesn't go too in depth sometimes. But I've watched like the History Channel documentaries about the presidents. They have like two pretty in-depth series. So like certain ones, like I've always found James K. Polk stood out as a good one.
Yeah,
like I see. Yeah, between Jackson and Lincoln, they're all one-termers,
right?
But he's the only one that was a success.
Right, a success in what he set out to do.
Yes,
but what he set out to do divided the country. But yes, he was a success, and that's kind of the Robert Murray school where. And more recent historians are looking at him and saying, this guy said what he was going to do, and then he did it. And by the way, some of that interpretation is coming from, there was a little bit of a Bush element to it, because that was always George W. Bush's pitch. Like, I say what I'm going to do, and I do it, whether you like it or not, kind of thing. But Polk is there with that. He absolutely. He said he was going to get Oregon. He said he was going to get the Texas boundary settled, and boy, did he ever. It was very successful. But
in all one term.
In all one term. had a war in one term. I mean, that's pretty, and a conclusion. Um, he destroyed not only the United States political scene, let's say it that way. What he did is he divided the Democratic Party. And so in dividing the Democratic Party, it really was never put back together. I mean, it's yes, presidents won. So they got Pierce and they got Buchanan after that, but that party was never the same. It was split north and south. Your Locofoco northern parties and your southern or northerners cooperating with southerners, and that was really something Polk could not put that genie back in the bottle. And where he was somewhere, I don't want to say quite in the middle, but not as extreme as some of the southerners, where they wanted to go. And so the resolution of the Mexican War is somewhat of an accident. He sends his guy down there to do a treaty, and the guy executes a treaty without getting Polk's approval. But it turned out pretty good, because otherwise it would have taken 2 terms to finish Mexico.
If I remember correct, Polk died not long after his term ended.
He died, right? Yeah.
That could have been another divisive moment for the country, because it was such a tumultuous point there anyway, leading up to the Lincoln presidency not long after.
But Polk was never a little bit, but it's Taylor's death that did that more, because with Polk was never your old wise man leader of the country. He was he was representing a party, a partisan, an angle, and he was the leader of that group. And he pushed his agenda forward. What I've learned doing the Taylor cast a little bit on that is that Polk probably wanted more of Mexico. And a lot of Democrats wanted more of Mexico. And you had all the way to an all Mexico movement. It was like, well, let's not stop fighting. Taylor's position, which I hadn't realized, which was his position, was that just because you captured Mexico City, and just because I've been successful beating off barely, really, beating off Santa Ana in north of Mexico, north central, you can take a country's capital. That doesn't mean you won the war. They can drain you. And there was some, at least Taylor's assessment is that what was going to happen if they did not negotiate that peace. Like I said, Polk sent his agent. He wanted to get a sign off. The agent went ahead and negotiated a treaty with Mexico. So then it came to Washington, D.C. because of communications at the time as an all or nothing. You want to do this treaty or not? And Polk signed it at that point. So by accident, yes, he sort of got everything compressed into that time. And we have states that we treasure now.
It's funny you just said treaties, how long they took to happen back then. We look at nowadays when we can email and get things so quickly, but I wonder how much John Adams may have had a second term if he got in the treaty with France, although he did get it, but we just didn't know.
Well, here's one. Have you listened to the Presidencies of the United States podcast?
A few times, yeah.
A few times, okay. Now, I had him on, we did High Noon in Trenton, which was about this period, a period that I was unaware of, where the White House was in Trenton, New Jersey, very briefly, over a summer, because they feared yellow fever during Adams' administration, and sometimes did get yellow fever in Philadelphia. So bring the White House to what is now still, it's one of the few states that still has its original building. So the Trenton State House still has components that were there when John Adams was president. And he was there. But one of the things is that John Adams was trying to do a summer of working from home in Quincy and had to rush back because they were under his secretaries, his cabinet was undermining him, on this treaty, and very well might not have gotten it at all. But you're right that those communications at the end, that treaty with France may have turned that election. It's hard for me to say. The Jeffersonian Republicans were a very strong, potent political force. So I do believe It's kind of like the Carter 1980 hostages thing. I still do believe there's probably just about as big a question about those two elections. Because in 1800, I think that the Republicans were a more potent force than the Federalist, Adams, Nationalist, or whatever you want to call them, group supporting him.
I think that's a good
Even with
comparison.
even with a success like that treaty, it possibly would have saved him. It's hard to know. New York had organized so much that it might have been beyond a day-to-day issue and was a more political, doorbell, what we'd call it today, doorbell factor. Then that's an interesting, definitely interesting question, though.
Yeah, and I said I've watched documentaries. I find those guys interesting, but also in the last few years, I've read some books. There was a Harry Truman's Excellent Adventure is a book I read by
Oh,
Matthew Alago. It's a book where basically Truman gets in his car and drives around to give a speech, and he didn't have Secret Service protection. He was just a civilian out of the office at that point. And like the book starts off simply with a story where like he gets pulled over, probably for driving too slowly, and the officer like leans in, license registration. It's like, oh my God, Mr. President, and like Harry's just like, oh, what do you need? And like he's just trying to be a normal citizen. And every diner he goes to, like immediately, like there's paparazzi and police are there immediately just because like they don't want something that bad to happen to him while he's there. But it's just like he's just trying to drive around and be like you and me walking around, but it was not possible because he was the most recent ex-president. Yeah,
I think that while he was president, he did things like this. There is some reality to that 1948 campaign where he would just do this retail politics. And I have a good account, which I've talked about, of him in Texas campaigning in 1948. And there were some kids like heckling, and he just embarrassed the living crap out of them, and they had to run away. And then there was a guy with a horse, and this is an old guy used to farms and used to horses, and he looks at the horse in the mouth and says, "This is not a very good horse." And joining him at the last minute because it was kind of crazy time was the senator running the candidate running for Senate in 48, which was Lyndon Johnson. And so he, very tired, had to rush and almost exhausted, had to get there to the train to be able to be at the train stop with Truman. But good retail politician.
that actually speaks to like the difference I mentioned earlier, like Hillary Clinton working with her, where she's surrounded by Secret Service when it really the only thing that entitles her to that is she's an ex-president's wife.
Right.
And Harry Truman, an ex-president who didn't have protection at that point, just wandering around, and you can't get near Hillary Clinton.
And I know that the times are different, and I know that security is different. I know that there was a threat, like to her, because she's the way people feel about her. I can't help but think, however, that I found her to be an insular candidate, and she sort of got it done in 2000 in New York. She went up there to New York State, which can be Republican, and was able to charm some people. But generally speaking, I think running those type of people, you can say it's security, but there's a certain point at which is it still the security, or is it the person? They're not reaching people. Bill Clinton, quite a different story. Quite a different.
He definitely a charmer. Yeah.
There's got to be a little of that, even in the modern day TV politics. I almost think that Bill Clinton, coming from where he did, goes back to, even though he's telegenic, he could be. He wasn't Reagan. He wasn't somebody who looked into the camera and did well there. He was somebody who did better with a crowd, maybe a speech that's televised, but a crowd, and meeting a lot of people. And in Arkansas, I think that helped him quite a bit. So you almost harken back to an older time because that's the way Arkansas still was. When he was governor, it probably only had a couple TV channels anyway. So they're almost back in the. It reminds me of a story that I heard of a guy that was the Taoiseach of Ireland. And, it's a small country. And this guy, and I, for the life of me, I can't remember his name, but he was Taoiseach for a while. And they said you had almost a 1 out of 3 chance of having shook his hand if you lived in Ireland. That's how many times. That's how much he traveled and campaigned, and he was so retail, that you about 1 out of 3 people met this Taoiseach or Prime Minister of Ireland, and I think Bill Clinton in Arkansas is something like that. And then but he had that, and I think why did it work? Because we went back to the technology of cable allowed for more time. That's what I think. And that really helped Bill Clinton. It allowed for more time. You could see more emotions from a person. It wasn't a quick little Reaganite soundbite.
Expedia and Visit Scotland invite you to come step into centuries of history that await in Scotland. Castles steeped in legend walk along cobblestone streets. Come share the warmth of stories passed down through generations. This is a place with a past that is fully present today and all yours to explore. Plan your Scottish escape today at expedia.com/Visit Scotland.
Because when Clinton tried to do that, he sometimes worked, sometimes didn't. But when I know Michael Deaver, who was Reagan's guy, didn't think Clinton was good looking in the camera. But on longer moments, like meeting with Arsenio, playing the saxophone, telling stories, that all of a sudden there was more time because it's cable and talk shows. He's the talk show president.
Oh yeah, he did stuff with MTV to reach out to the younger voters. He got it. He definitely got what he needed to do to attract that base of voters. Well, Reagan delivered a message wonderfully. He knew how to get a message across very easily.
But if the technology was better, if Reagan were running, let's say, for re-election in 92 or something, he would have had trouble with that medium. The expectations of that medium in a younger guy, like they already were trying with Gary Hart to have that contrast of a younger person, but that technology would have been harder for him because it required more. It's like, okay, yeah, you said your 2 sentences, but actually this is the talk show world. We're like Sally Jesse Raphael. We want more now. We want to hear your emotions, and Bill Clinton, and the feeling the pain and all that. Fascinating thing to think about.
Yeah, it's kind of like you said, like Clinton appearing on the talk shows as opposed to like the Sunday morning news shows where you get your rapid fire responses and you just move on.
I think he had trouble with those. He was not disciplined always on message. He would mess up with those type of things. He's good in a lot of ways. The political consultant's dream, that candidate, but because he is a political consultant, he would, there's the famous story when Tony Blair wins election over in UK, and he gets the call from Bill Clinton, like, congratulations, Tony. It's like, I heard you won Strathmore South. That's the first time a Labor candidate won in 20 years. And like, Tony Blair's like, did we win Strathmore South? He knew, and no joke, Clinton knows things at a county level, right? Sometimes precinct level within certain counties. He knew that even back in 92 and stuff like that. So, yeah, but sometimes rapid fire, Chris Matthews, you could get Clinton on that stuff because he would go a little off message. He could get hot. He had a temper, from what I hear, read. And all of that.
You just mentioned Chris Matthews. I remember the big deal I thought it was a big deal when you had him on the show.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. It was very generous. He picked it So while I did have a good connect at the time, like I said, Simon and Schuster was really starting to promote some history books, and they really provided some opportunities to talk to people there. But Chris Matthews, I was told that he just jumped on it. He's like, I'm gonna help this guy. This sounds great. And yeah, it was a great.
RFK book, right?
It was for
RFK.
RFK book. Yeah, good book on RFK. He had a lot of insights. He knows the Kennedys very well. He knows the subject thoroughly well. Quick, rapid fire. Boy, that was the only interview I did. I thought I had a lot of questions, and it's 20 minutes, and we're out of time. There's nothing more. I got nothing more to say. I started asking him Reagan questions because I didn't have any Kennedy stuff left, and he's just quick, and that's the way he was. And now, did it help me a lot? It's funny. All those interviews, when you do an interview with a famous person, I find actually, that show didn't get as many listens as, say, like show about Neville Chamberlain or show about Reagan or a decent one about Lincoln. That Lincoln episodes always get a pretty high. It's funny. What the audience, it's funny in the podcast world, it's other podcasters. So I have Mike Duncan on. That's the most highest rated episode I ever did, was having Mike Duncan on twice, so it's kind of funny, but it's not like, but he was really nice. I never had any contact. I've been I've thought about connecting again, but my issue is I don't have a lot of administrative time with my podcast. So the time to reach out and get celebrities and book them. I get a guest because they sound interesting and they know something other people don't.
And I can't remember his name right now. The guy from 9 Broadcast Plaza.
Richard Bay.
Richard Bay, yes.
Yeah.
Right. I remember listening to that one while driving on the Garden State Parkway.
He's coming back. Yeah, for New Jersey people, Richard Bay is really well known. He did go national, but I think his national career, which was part of that talk show thing, is not known. Like, he's really known for people in the New York, New Jersey area. I am blessed. That's all I can say, to have him as a listener, friend. He comes up to New York. We've done dinner a couple times, but you have to understand, like, what's that movie where it's Wolfman Jack and he's talking into the microphone in the middle of the desert or whatever. And it's like, sometimes doing a podcast, particularly in the beginning when there wasn't a whole social network around podcast. Now it's different, but in the beginning, it was just talking into a microphone and you're wondering, is anybody listening to this? Does this really matter? And that was one of several moments where I was like, wow, okay, I guess I'm doing something here. If he's interested in it, then he's a broadcaster and he's interested in it. So it's been great. And he really has been a good friend. Also had things like movie producers, guys flying massive planes, military folks, movie producers, also actors, one of the actors in one of the Batman series, chef from Camp David, senatorial aides, just a lot of people who, of different walks of life. And that's always great too. That just lets you know that you're not Wolfman Jackal in the desert.
Yeah.
People are.
Like you said, when you started, social media wasn't what it is now. So like I heard nothing of your podcast. I literally just, like I said, searched for history related podcasts in the ZUNE software and yours came up. Now, like who knows, maybe I'd find it on Facebook or Twitter or whatever they call it, or yeah, maybe I'd find like a link to it there.
Sure. It's still, it's interesting. I still think even in 2026, what sells a podcast is other podcasts. Still, the social's a little better. And of course you can see videos and get some audio on the social. But I find that the best thing is if if someone has a podcast, do an appearance on another podcast. That's the best way to get listeners. I would follow my own advice more, but I'm just too darn busy. When I didn't have a full-time, I was so busy looking for a full-time. It's like, so but that's, I always found I did. And that's why I'm intermittent with, social media, keeping up. I do some Instagram. If I have a cool photo, X, I still do some, but I'm mixed on it. I do all three: Threads, X, Blue Sky. Just do it all, but not much on any one. Hang out with Richard Brookhiser on Twitter or X. That's probably my only reason for going. My reason for going on X is Joyce Carol Oates and Richard Brookhiser, because I follow
Brookhiser
them.
follows me.
Yeah, he's great. He is very open to anything if you have something good to say.
He's from the History Channel documentaries I mentioned. He's usually the one talking about the Revolutionary War guys, the original founding fathers.
Yeah. You mean to say, like, what you mean before? Are you talking about like Stamp Act folks, or you just mean you just mean the original guys, John Adams and Franklin?
Yeah, when the presidential documentaries, like he's talking about the first batch.
You're right that arcing or marking history by presidents is a pretty American thing to do, and it sort of works as long as people don't take it too seriously. Like, really, did Obama control every action between 2009 and 2016? No, certainly not. But it's a good way to look at things and theme up history. It sure beats wars. Wars, I guess, are another way. We don't have too many. We don't always have them to do. Yeah, so presidents are the way we look at it. Luckily, we don't let them, hopefully, become kings. So only the one got the 4 terms. And I retroactively am not in support of that. So he got away with it, but no one else. I'm glad no one else should. So I'm glad we don't have kings. So the fact that we don't have it, yeah, you can break up history in presidential terms, makes, since we're a democracy and they're only going to be there 8 years or 4.
Yeah, or in Roosevelt's case, close to 16, but still.
Yeah. I can see the criticism when you think about it that way. You think about it. Yeah, like imagine having a guy there for 16 years. And some people loved him, sure, but get tired after a while.
Yeah, and now it's like 4 years seems like a long time. 8 years seems like an eternity. I can't imagine 16. Well, then again, they weren't dealing with social media and 24-hour news cycles where it's pounded at us all times.
It's very true. I do think, like, say, 1933 was a very paced time because of the amount that he was doing, the amount that he could get away with. If you have a Congress that's approving everything you do, so like when Wilson, during his 1913, and then after that, it got harder and harder. Same with Roosevelt, 33. You had another burst in like 36, 37, and then it got harder and harder. Reagan in 80, 81, a lot going on. And so, yeah, so these times in history, they could be pretty quick, but nothing, absolutely nothing like our social media world, where you don't even know what was the story of today. It's the story of, remember Venezuela? Like, we started the year, that was going to be the biggest deal. And I started doing research on it, and it was all over. I barely had time to put out an episode. Yeah.
I was listening to something on news yesterday where Venezuela was mentioned. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. Not because it was an unforgettable story, but because so much has happened since.
Yeah. So let's see. So you got about 5 minutes. Yeah. So anything, what do you think? Anything you,
Well, I enjoy, like I said, the Jimmy Carter series, the long, in-depth stories you do.
It's hard. It's hard to do long ones, but yeah, it is. I appreciate that, by the way, and I enjoy them, and I feel like I get a lot done. I feel like I can say something, I can prove more. I feel like I can tell you anything about Reagan in an So if an argument comes, if I have to prove a point of politics today, the Reagan, I have that data. Zachary Taylor, I'm very, very similar right now, and the era around Zachary Taylor. Probably more important. I can talk about that. Carter, I can talk a lot about. I've done a lot on Nixon. So yeah, these in-depth, I've been glad to do them, to have more time to do them. I want to, I have to think about it, but I might do a 1968 for the next election. We'll see. I might do like expand it to an 8-parter or whatever.
That's one I actually would really like to know about, because I know there's so much that happened around then.
So much
that I know basically what happened, but I've never really gotten in depth on it.
I mean, I got an episode that's coming out soon, which is just Humphrey ran out of money. Now, I didn't know that. I didn't know that originally when I did 68 Cast. It's like, imagine that. Like in Canada, he's actually starting to go up in the polls, and there's no money to put ads on TV. So that's just not a problem. A modern candidate, they have nothing but ads.
That's definitely not an issue nowadays. No.
Anything else? Any other requests that you things that you like or like to hear more of? Or
no, I enjoy what you do. The fact that you mentioned Zachary Taylor as often as you did today is something I don't often hear. But
that's why I had to do it. I
enjoy like stuff like even Chester Arthur, Grover Cleveland, all those guys who are kind of lost in the shuffle. I enjoy stories about them.
We got coming up the sons. So his Chester Arthur's son and Chester Arthur's grandson. Big stories with them. Big stories. Not political, because they both listen to his advice, never become a politician. But the grandson has a role in the San Francisco 1960s free love and free whatever movements. Haight-Ashbury and all of that. So that's the Arthur legacy that we'll be talking about soon. Probably Patreon. So, but yeah, well, Billy, I really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you. Thanks for coming on, and thanks for being by the way, I just want to also say to you that I believe this episode will be very entertaining to listeners. This isn't like we've gotten into some stuff. So I thank you. And thank you for being a listener and everything. So appreciate it.
Thank you for the 20 years of entertainment and education. I appreciate it quite a bit.
Meet the new iSIMS, the single talent acquisition platform that's fully future-ready. It works wherever and however you hire, with insights no one else offers. One solution that fits seamlessly into your existing tech stack, which is why IT and HR leaders trust it. With the best of enterprise-grade software and AI, iSIMS helps you identify and secure the right talent faster. iSIMS, powering exceptional hiring. Learn more at isims.com.